Hi, welcome to Haven. This is a podcast that's a safe space for curiosity and conversation. I'm your host, Haven, and today I'm curious about what does my generation think about marriage? What does my generation think about marriage? I think of all of the phrases that I've heard from like my friends and colleagues and peers, which is like, does marriage even last? Like, what's the point? Why wouldn't we just live together? And then when we're totally certain, maybe we'll consider marriage. Or I've heard the phrases of like, it never works. Like, it's not only 50% chance that it doesn't work. So why would you go on an airplane if there's 50% chance that it would crash? Just don't go on the airplane. And that's what seems to be circling around. So I'm a millennial. I'm 33 years old. And I see it really pervasive. Like the median age of getting married is later and later. Like looking back, I heard a study that in my age group, only 44% of us are married, compared to generations past where our age, 81% of them were married. So there's like a really strong pushback or delay or just opting out entirely to marriage. And I'm really curious about why is that? Like what changed over even just the most recent 2 generations that is a steady decline? And I want to know, why is it now that women are in the workforce and there's less of the power dynamic of one breadwinner, one power over control, it's more equal? Or is it because social media is portraying this false idea of relationships and what's really possible, and we're all holding out for this bigger, better deal that may never come? Or is it that we're less religious in our generation and we don't feel like marriage really makes sense? You can have all of the perks by not doing that. So why would you then make the government involved? I don't need a piece of paper to tell me who I love and tell me, anything specific besides maybe the tax breaks. I feel like there's a lot of factors that go into it, but one stuck out in my mind the most. And I don't think that people are not interested in getting married. I think the idea of marriage, of devoting your life and your heart and your soul and having one person in your corner at all times is actually super attractive to people. I think that's something that we all just like innately crave, is having our person. Maybe we don't say the term soulmates as much anymore because obviously there's so much choice, but to have someone who has your best interests at heart and is in your corner that you get to experience life with and journey with. It's why we have so many Bachelor and Bachelorette franchises. Like people do believe in some regard that like if you date enough, maybe you'll get to find your person. So I do think that we're still craving what marriage offers, but we're reticent to go down the altar, and we're reticent to say I do and actually pledge ourselves to someone. And I think a huge piece of that, at least for my generation, is a lot of us grew up in broken homes. A lot of us saw our parents' marriages not make it and felt the shrapnel and the after effects of pain from that, and how dismantling it is and how just painful overall it can be to the household experience. And we're reticent to experience that pain or inflict that pain on, our kids. Or maybe we grew up and our parents did stay together, but it's not the kind of marriage that we'd want for ourselves. It's not the kind of thing that we would see that would work for us. Didn't seem like it was thriving. It seemed like maybe they just were surviving, or really great roommates, or just there, but it's definitely not what we'd want to model for ourselves and not something that we would willingly sign up for. So maybe we have this desire for having a thriving, healthy, committed marriage that makes it last. I feel like that's the question my friends and I are asking, is how do you make it last and enjoy it? That's the biggest question mark that seems pretty unsolved. And the visual that I have in my head of it is essentially like, if you see marriage as building the shared home together. We're building this home in unison. How am I supposed to build a home when the only home that I've experienced crumbled and fell apart? They didn't have the right structure. They didn't have the right foundation. They didn't have the tools or whatever to make it work. So if I'm going to set out to build this home, it's like I'm trying to do it without any type of blueprint. I'm going to be building this marriage with no idea if what I'm going to do will also crumble like my family's. And I'm going to try my best, but I have literally no proven track record blueprint of why that would work. And I think we're opting out of marriage because we're scared. I don't think it's like any type of specific like hedonism in our generation or culture. I think that we're scared because we didn't see how to do it. We don't really know how to make it work. And there is a chance that we will then feel the same pain of it not working or the same apathy of, well, this marriage turned into just surviving roommates. And so what I was thinking, even kind of coming into this episode, is, well, what was my experience with marriage? And what have I done with my husband to try and avoid that and try and put this kind of blueprint? So I'm going to take you all the way back. My husband and I, we met super young. If you've listened to this podcast, you've heard a little bit of our journey. But essentially, I got engaged at 20. And my bachelorette party was my 21st birthday. And I got married 2 weeks after that. So we kept joking that we were too young to get married. And Twitter was big at the time. And so we made up a hashtag, too young to get married. And we would put things on there that we were actually doing that made us laugh, or we're like, oh my gosh, we're really young to decide this lifelong commitment. So the first one that we put on there was, you're too young to get married if on your wedding registry you add candy. Because we went to Target, we had our little registry guns, and we were going up and down every aisle, seeing what we needed, because we didn't have anything. Like, we were so excited to just get cutlery. We're like, now we can eat. We don't have to use paper plates in our hands. But we went down to the candy aisle and we were like, our family home definitely needs some candy. So, yep, we're definitely going to. And we put that on there. We're like, maybe we're too young to get married. That's what started it. And then the next one was, because I was finishing up college. It was my last year of college. Was, you're too young to get married if you use your school planner to also help plan your wedding. So I was using literally like this test on this day and then coordinate and book the photographer on this day. Like, everything was in my little college planner. So yeah, pretty young to get married if you're double dipping that as a student. The other one was, you're too young to get married if Selena Gomez at the Nickelodeon Teen Choice Awards is your wedding hair inspo pic going into your special day. Like, maybe if someone you're aspiring to is also like 18 or 19 and that's the picture you bring in, you're probably a little young to make that decision. And then if you have to have a dry wedding because the bride is not necessarily 21 and old enough to drink, then you're probably too young to get married. That one saved us a lot of money though, so I actually have no regrets. It was very helpful to our wedding budget. Also along those lines is, you're too young to get married if you have to have your dad sign for your getaway car because you were under the rental car agreement of 25 years old. And then this was the last one that capped off the whole series. One, because we were getting married and it was over. But two, because I just felt like it was just the piece de resistance to the entire story, which was, you're too young to get married if you go on a Disney cruise for your honeymoon. And we were laughing at this one because I looked at actually all the rates and it was the top rated for food and entertainment. And they had like an adults only area. So I was like, sign me up. It sounds like a perfect cruise. But we were walking on there getting like congratulated to the boat by Mickey and Minnie. And then Aaron did this great impression of the cruise director that we would just hear overhead, which is like, don't miss Chip and Dale on the Lido deck. And we were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Like, we're married and we're just here on this Disney cruise. And we had the best time. All that to say, we were very, very young. So my entry into marriage was somewhat naive and juxtaposed at the same time as I'm getting married. Right before I was going to get engaged, my parents were going through a divorce. And they had been married for like 23 years at this point. And it was like gut-wrenching. Like totally sideswiped me. They were the family growing up saying, we don't believe in divorce. Other people may get it, but we won't. So I had such a sense of security in that and such a foundation. So when that cracked, it kind of threw everything open where I was like, oh my gosh, if they can't make it, I don't know if I can step into this decision because I don't know how to do it then. Like, I don't know. I wasn't even old enough to really think of, well, how did they do it that was right or not right? I just saw that's all I've seen. And they were committed to each other, but now they're not. And it was a really, really strange time. Like as I'm entering into starting to build our family unit, my childhood home is crumbling right behind me. And I don't know why. And I don't know how to prevent it in my own relationship. But looking back, I wouldn't say I didn't learn anything because of that. Maybe learning what not to do is equally valuable as learning what to do. And so I think sometimes our generation is like, well, if no one taught us, how are we supposed to do it? Just because no one taught us, it doesn't mean that we can't learn. And there's a ton to learn. So I learned a lot from actually failed relationships that helped me as I'm building this marriage without a blueprint. And for me, my brain thinks in metaphors. It just helps me process big, confusing dynamics. And so keeping with this house metaphor, I was thinking, okay, what's the foundation then? Like if you're going to start it, what is the foundation? And I'm a person of faith. And so for me and my relationship with my husband, God is our primary foundation involved in it. We both have the same beliefs there. We have our own personal relationship with Jesus that factors in a lot. And I think the healthiest marriage for us is absolutely built on that. And I know a ton of failed marriages of people that loved God and had a relationship with Jesus. And so I was like, it's got to be other stuff in addition to that. Like that can be the best foundation, but I've still seen it not work out. So like what else goes into that? And I think the structure and the foundation you're building, it also comes from you as an individual. Both you and your partner are bringing things into the foundation of your marriage. It's your family of origin. It's your childhood. It's your trauma. It's your responses, your past relationships. Everything is kind of coming into this union of what you're building. And so you have to be aware of the materials in which you're building with on this foundation. And in order to identify the materials, you're going to have to be willing to address the individual. And that was one thing that my mom recommended. It was even before we got engaged. She said, I love that you and Aaron love each other. It's so clear that you care about one another and want to make this step. My recommendation before you get married is you do a year of individual therapy to see what would you be bringing into this marriage. Like, who are you? What are the things that could come along with you that maybe you're not anticipating, and also in the other person? And she recommended we do it before getting engaged because she was like, what if something comes up that's maybe a deal breaker, or you want more time to process and you don't want this deadline of this like public commitment that's coming up and you want to try and figure it out in private. And that year of individual therapy of us identifying the materials we were about to build our marriage with and kind of taking inventory of each piece was one of the most painful years, if not the most painful year of our entire relationship. I had no idea what I was bringing into the relationship. I had no idea and underestimated what Aaron was. So Aaron's materials, he grew up in Florida with his parents and his little brother, and his mom suffered from epilepsy. And so when he was 8 years old, his mom had a seizure and unexpectedly passed away. And Aaron was the one to find her as an 8-year-old little boy. And so the impact of that was weightier than I ever could have realized. Because then it turned into something so much bigger, where his dad wasn't able to take care of him the way he needed. So he was shuffled off to different family members. And he started having unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with the depression and the abandonment and this severe trauma that he was left to handle as a child, essentially by himself and relatively orphaned. And those are materials that I didn't realize had such a huge impact into shaping this man that I love, the man that came out from the ashes as a beautiful human being, but maybe didn't address what that trauma did to him or how it's still affecting his everyday life, at the time as a 23-year-old. And then me, on the surface, I looked like I would probably have great materials. For the most part, besides my parents getting a divorce, I had a really wonderful childhood. Like, it was incredible. I always felt safe. I was always fed. My parents never fought in front of us, which I found out later is an issue. Not fighting is actually definitely a problem, and there needs to be conflict. But our family loved God. We went to church. We had great friends. And so I thought, oh, this is great. I'm bringing in some great stuff into this. But as I unpacked it more in therapy, when you don't see healthy conflict, you then have unhealthy conflict style. And so I realized, oh my gosh, I don't know how to fight. And so I'm just going 0 to 100 of intensity because I don't know how to mitigate it. And then I've also seen, oh my gosh, I have this pattern in the women in our lives where we are strong, domineering, controlling, and exhausted from carrying the mental load of the relationship, paired with these passive, unengaged men. And if I wasn't willing to address that in myself, I'm just going to repeat this pattern because that feels comfortable and that's what I've seen. But as I'm picking up these materials of building it into our marriage, I have to question each one I pick up. Is this one that I want to put into my life? Do I want to repeat this pattern? Do I want to not know how to fight well? Do I want to kind of rest on my laurels thinking, well, I grew up in a beautiful home and it was fine. Was it really fine? What are the aspects that I loved that I want to recreate and I welcome into the materials? But what are the ones that I say, that's not going to work for me and that's not going to go into my marriage? If I didn't have that intensive time to really categorize and understand that, all of it's going to go in. Everything. Just because it comes in with me. And it's not to say that that 1 year all of a sudden changed everything and we learned everything and we're fine. It's now the opportunity to look at each other and say, okay, I see what you're about to bring into our marriage and what you're going to have to address and work on. You see what I'm bringing into the marriage and what I want to work on. And it gave us the absolute gift to choose each other at the altar and to get to say, I do because I know what I'm, for the most part, signing up for. That part of the materials is huge because then it's every day building into this marriage. Every single thing that we are both bringing in, it has to be an inventory as we're putting it together. But it's not just the materials. I feel like that's important to also know the tools that you're using as you're building into that entire relationship.
Haven, what's the best part about a fight?
Winning.
Winning?
No, I'm kidding. You don't really win in marital fights.
You can win. I think when you come together in the right way, maybe what you thought was winning isn't winning at all.
I think I know your answer to what your favorite thing about a fight is.
Make up sex afterward?
Okay, maybe I didn't. Anyways, we have created a course called How to Fight Better. It's under our umbrella of Pillow Talk, which is about just conversations that you can have with your spouse. We brought in our actual marriage counselor of 12 years, Dr. Jonathan Cood, to help us and explain the tools that he's been teaching us that have helped us have what we feel like is a really thriving, enjoyable marriage and one that we're proud of. And so we were like, how can we share these experiences, but also the professional person who taught us how to do this with the world? So you can go to joinpillowtalk.com right now to get How to Fight Better. Okay, back to the episode. Aaron uses completely different tools in our marriage than I do. Like, we're almost like so opposite at this point. Like, for me, growing up, if it was like a back to school thing, most people would be excited about like the clothes or, new backpack. And I was so excited. Only thing I wanted to do was to go to Office Depot. And my mom said that like when the doors would open, I would take a nice big smell and be like, oh, I love the smell of paper. Like it was just comforting to me. I love the wall of pens. I love like the pristine organization. It's just always been in my nature that like I'm a gal who likes to get organized and bring that to the chaos of life. I'm also very ambitious. So my childhood dream when I was a kid was I wanted to be the first female president of the United States. And I was extremely serious about this. And one time we took a family trip to DC and I created business cards to hand out. As we were taking a tour, the tour guide would say, oh, and here's the senator. I would run up to the senator. I would hand them my business card that had this printed on there. And I said, hi, my name's Haven. I plan to be the first female president. Vote for me if you're still alive. That was my catchphrase because I was a child and they were senators. So my name is Haven. Vote for me if you're still alive. So not only am I ambitious, but I'm organized enough that I'm going to make it happen. And that is my personality. Erin's personality is romantic and creative and thoughtful and artistic. And just sometimes I wonder if he's even living in reality because he's so up in the air. And he loves the card game Magic the Gathering. He's very obsessed at that. He'll just hyper focus in different seasons. Right now, it's definitely Magic card game. Getting a lot of TikToks. Our TikToks back and forth. It's just pretty much that's his algorithm right now. And I fell in love with his artistic nature. He fell in love how I'm so driven. And just like that with marriage, the things that you fall in love with one another often are the crux and biggest point of contention and conflict in our relationship. It's a weird switch about the tools we're using of how I think it's so amazing, but over time it's like, well, those tools were great for when I fell in love with you, but now you got to use my tools. Like mine are better than yours. Like it's not right for you to use those. Like these are the ones that we should both be masters in. And the story that comes to mind for me is when we got pregnant with our first baby. She's 5 years old and her name's Isley, but we tried so long to get pregnant with her. At that point, we've been married like 7 years when she was born. And there was a great deal of trying in between that. And so when I got pregnant, it was just like one of the best days of my life. I was so thrilled. That pregnancy test, I think, gave me a joy that I really, really needed after so much grief of wanting to have a baby. So we went through the pregnancy and everything was fine until one time I went in for a normal scan. And the ultrasound tech did her thing, but didn't say everything looked all fine, which, is a little bit concerning. So I was like, usually they say everything looks great and the doctor's coming in, but she just said, okay, the doctor will be in. So I'm waiting and then he comes in and he says, so she has asymmetrical growth, which means that only parts of her are getting the important nutrients and she's not growing the way we'd like her to. And so what that means for you is you need to come in twice a week so we can monitor and see if it'd be safe enough for her to live outside the womb instead of inside because she's just not getting what she needs. And the reason we would look so frequently because we're trying to prevent a stillbirth. And so I was like gutted. This is the child I prayed for, I dreamed about, I wanted so badly. And now it felt like, oh my gosh, there's a chance that she may not make it. And I don't know what to do and I can't do anything. So when that news came, I just cried and I cried. And, Erin and I, we talked a lot that night and just processed it all. And then he had plans with friends that night. He's like, of course I'll cancel. I'll be with you. And I was like, hey, we've talked so much. There's not much we can do right now. I was like, just go. I'm going to take a bath and watch my comfort show of The Office for like the 10th time. I'm just going to have that nice warm blanket and, we'll talk again tomorrow. He's like, okay. So the next morning, of course, it's the first thing I think about. It's the background music to all my thoughts. And so I was like, hey, can we take a walk? That was one of our favorite things to do, was to walk to this coffee shop. And normally it took about 30 minutes between our place to the coffee shop. We'd walk around the neighborhoods with like a specific pace. But when I was pregnant, it took us about 45 minutes because I was a very slow walker. So we're starting and he's like, oh, can I tell you about last night? And I was thinking, yeah, totally. Like, this is the perfect appetizer to the real meat of what we're going to talk about, which was the instance yesterday. So yes, tell me about it. And this man, for 45 minutes, the entirety of this coffee walk, tells me about the Jurassic Park escape room he did with his friends the night prior, in great detail about every single puzzle. And then he was like, yeah, we couldn't believe it. We unlocked this and then a dinosaur came out and it scared Colin. And I was thinking, are you serious? Our baby's life is in jeopardy? Like, and it was almost a game in my head where I was like, surely he's not going to spend the whole time. Like, I was almost being like, kind of like this passive aggressive, like pouty, like, yeah, oh, okay, cool. Just waiting for him to end so we could talk about what was actually important. So we finally get to the coffee shop. He finishes the whole story. I feel like I was in the escape room for 45 minutes just trying to get outside this locked room. And then he was like, but I know everything's, big from yesterday. How are you feeling? And I like unloaded. I was like, how am I feeling? How are you feeling? I can't believe it didn't come up for you. Like, what are you even talking about? How can you care about an escape room right now? Like, our baby may not make it. And I'm so concerned. And he was like, whoa, like it's not that I don't care. He's like, I care deeply. We've done everything the doctor said to do and she's okay right now. And the next appointment, we're going to have more information. And then I really felt in that moment like I'm at a crossroads here. Going back to the materials thing, I could unleash on him that I don't think he cares the way I care. This is not how I want him to support or handle me, or just all of this misplaced rage at him. Or I could see, oh, he's handling this a little more pragmatically than I am in my emotions right now. And I'm really grateful because I'm pretty volatile up and down and he's really steady. Because then what he followed up with was, I love our daughter and we're going to find out more information and then know what to do. And if she has to come early, then we will camp out at the NICU. And that's where we're going to live until she's safe enough to come home. If she's stillborn, we will learn how to grieve together and we will figure that out. I hope that does not happen and she's in great hands, but I know that we will be okay. And in my head, I then switched and I was like, thank God he's steady right now because I really need to borrow his hope and I really need to borrow his peace. And he's been through life-altering grief. I haven't. So it's terrifying, the thought of it. But I have a partner that knows what to do here and I can lean on him and I can be up and down. His tools that he's bringing into this scenario are different. I can't say, you're not researching, you're not looking into all the specifics, you're not overly concerned, that's wrong, because that's how I'm choosing to handle it. Or I can celebrate that the tools that he's using in this crisis are important, just as equally so for our marriage and our relationship and our family. I feel like that's where it can get really difficult in marriage is you don't value the uniqueness of what the other person's bringing and we just try and conform them into being ourselves because we think that we're handling things the right way. And it's just not always the case. And thank God our daughter is safe. She's healthy. She did come a month early at an emergency C-section and she was okay and we weathered it together. It's not to say that everything was all totally fine and we figured it out, but I was able to lean on his calm and his steadiness during what was a moment for me of crises. And that's one thing that I also gleaned from the failed marriages I had observed is over time you can fall in love with your spouse for their uniqueness, but if you're not careful, you may resent them for that exact thing and you don't celebrate it anymore. And I always wanted to choose to celebrate the uniqueness that Aaron's bringing into our relationship that are different strengths than mine. So then when I'm thinking about this metaphor of building a house and this marriage, the foundation's important, the materials, the tools, and now we're a couple years in and we have this thing that we're really proud of. But just like any house, sometimes there is a need for a remodel. And that may be outside elements, that have come in and torn through, like someone loses their job or something comes up with health, and that requires the marriage to change for what it's been. Or sometimes there's something inside the house that erupts and a ceiling caves in and you see there's been toxic black mold. Maybe a partner made a really, really bad mistake, or maybe there was infidelity, or maybe something that was hidden from you that you weren't aware of and it's crumbling and you look under all the walls and oh my gosh, it's everywhere. I had no idea. That requires a remodel. I think there's also the scenario too of sometimes you just want to remodel to keep things fresh and new. And maybe we've always done things one way, but I'm changing and I'm different. Maybe you're a mom and you're like, I've always been at home with the kids, but I want to go back in the workforce. I want to switch it up. And that will require your marriage dynamic to change. Sometimes remodels are a positive intention thing. And I think about the quote from Esther Perel, which says that throughout our lifetime, most of us will have 2 to 3 marriages. For some of us, those will be with the same person. And I feel like I've only been married 12 years, but I feel like that number should be so higher of like our marriage was remodeled when we moved cross country back to California and left everything that we knew. And it remodeled when our baby came a month early and threw us completely for a loop. It was a remodel when Aaron adjusted careers. It was a remodel even when I started this podcast and unexpectedly grew beyond what I had thought it would just as a little hobby. And it requires a lot of change. So when I think about our generation and our question is, how do you have a marriage that lasts and goes the distance? I feel like almost remodeling is one of the most important pieces. Is it's continually updating and continually changing because we're ever growing and ever changing people. Something staying the same actually isn't a good thing. That means it's not growing and it's not alive. Living things grow. And so I think don't be afraid of a remodel in your marriage. If you have a strong foundation and you respect each other's tools, you can handle the temporary mess of a construction zone to make something more beautiful together. Maybe you're listening and you do have a wonderful marriage, or at least you're working really hard and you feel like it's healthy and it's something that you're proud of. Part of me is, my request to you is please be more vocal about it. I feel like the messages out there, the media, is just how hard it is or how they don't last. And you just, every time I'm following something on social media and I see a picture of a celebrity couple, my assumption is, oh, they're getting a divorce. Because that's usually what it is. They just do this gorgeous picture and then the caption, headline, they're getting divorced. That is the messaging that we're continually seeing, is like, it's not going to work. It doesn't last. If it does, it's not fun. But if you have a marriage that is thriving, sometimes it can be this weird shame of like, well, I don't want to talk about it because other people are having it really hard and I don't want to rub it in their faces. I don't want to make it, something that makes them feel bad. And I can understand that. And I think it's a really altruistic thought, but the world needs to see healthy marriages. The world needs to see people who are doing it well and for the long haul and how to do it. And so my request to anyone listening that is in that space of marriage is talk more about it. There's not enough out there of positive representations of marriage that are real, that aren't these fake curated pieces of things. That's another thing. It's like, it's all of a sudden this beautiful family Christmas photo and this amazing accolade for an anniversary. And then, oh, well, they're getting divorced 2 months later. That's a huge shock. Like, that's not real. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about sharing publicly about your marriage and opening up the availability for younger couples to come glean. That helped Aaron and I so much, is learning from other couples that we looked up to. How do you handle this? When this came up, what did you say? Here's one of our recent fights. Can you help us walk through who was right or wrong? And having that dialogue with people we want to be like. That's another thing too, is I'm always reticent to take advice from someone where I'm like, well, do I actually want to be like you? Because if I don't, then maybe I don't really want this advice. But if you're the one who's walked the walk and done what we're aspiring to, oh my gosh, I'm all ears. I would love to glean from your wisdom, borrow from your mistakes and pain, and learn how I can better myself. And so I'm curious what the next generation's idea of marriage is going to be. It does seem less and less popular, but I think if it's done well, it's transformative and it's so important and it's so beautiful. So in this season where we're talking all about relationships and primarily marriage, mainly because that's my state of life. Like I don't have tons of things to share about dating. I don't have tons of things to share on that aspect because my day-to-day is, okay, I'm in a committed, monogamous, lifelong relationship. So for the others that are listening and want to do that, I'm more than happy to share what's worked for us, what's not worked, what my perspective is. But when I was getting curious and I was interested even in doing a solo episode about this, of what do I think is the consensus that I've heard from my friends? What have I heard around? What's culture telling me? What's social media messaging and feeding me? What's actual reality in between all of this? What came up is I think marriage is valuable and it's important and it's worth fighting for and it's essential. And so if I actually believe that, then what's my counter narrative to marriages don't last? It's not worth it anyways. It's just going to crash. Why even involve? I disagree. I disagree for the reasons though of if you're aware of the foundation and the materials and the tools and the partner, if you're willing to remodel, it can be incredible. And I'm so passionate about that. I think it's so important to at least have a loud voice that says marriage can be beautiful and awesome. And it's the cliche that it takes work, but it's work that you pride yourself in. It's not like backbending, terrible sweat in the sun work. It's really fruitful, lovely collaboration of work. And so overall, maybe I didn't have the blueprint that I wanted as I was building this. But throughout my journey of marriage, I've gleaned from so many wise couples and so many people doing it right. Shout out to PT and Bonnie Lee. I love your marriage. Ever since I was a teenager, thank you for marrying us. PT is the one who married us. Thank you for the premarital you did with us. Thank you for the example. I think of Pace and Sarah Hartfield. I loved watching you guys love each other. When I was a teen, thank you, Chris and Janice King. Thank you, Kevin and Kimberly Batista, for all of the ways that you loved your spouses back and forth. Everyone that I've listed, I have gleaned something different from you because of your willingness to share, from your openness about what's worked and not worked, and just the everyday experiences you've had. And if Aaron and I can be some type of real life example for anyone listening or anyone in our real life, that would be my honor. And I would hope that the next generation would have more and more and more examples of people who weathered the storms of life with their life partner and were able to make it through together. So this was a little bit of a one-off of an episode. I'm kind of playing with just taking one concept and thinking about it every which way internally and then just kind of presenting my thoughts. Maybe I'll do more if it resonates, or we can go back to the question format, lobbing back and forth with a different guest. But I wanted to try something new. And I wanted to see where the curiosity took me, which is kind of my whole thing. So thank you for listening. You can like and subscribe and follow Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or I'm on social media at Haven the Podcast, Instagram and TikTok. You can also sign up for Pillow Talk, How to Fight Better. It's the relational e-course that my husband and I did with our actual marriage counselor, Dr. Jonathan Cood at joinpillowtalk.com. It's something that we're really, really proud of giving tools to couples to ultimately fight better in a way that draws you closer to one another instead of further apart. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.